On it? Okay. So, hello everyone. A very good evening. And online students, am I audible? You can write yes or no on the chat box. uh, अभी लेकिन मेरे पे तो लाइव स्ट्रीम दिखाई नहीं रहा है. अब दिखा रहा है. ओके, ठीक है. So, before I start, all of you must be aware that this is a orientation lecture. Means basically I'll be telling you a brief overview about what we are going to do in the next 5.5 to 6 months. And it's more to take up your doubts or say आपके जो भी issues हैं. So before I begin, I just want to ask a question that how many of you have decided anthropology because you have studied anthropology in some way or the other, or how many of you have decided based on recommendation of some seniors or just based on some social media stuff? How many of you have studied anthropology in some way or the other? Please raise your hand. Something. So most of you are basically based on somebody's recommendation कि ये अच्छा optional है, ले लो, काम हो जाएगा, score अच्छा आता है. Okay. So, and that's a possible case. Means in fact most of the people who are appearing for civil services, they are engineers, because by far it's the hobby of engineers to basically appear for civil services also. So and then most of the engineering subjects not possible to take up in mains as an optional. It's too lengthy, too difficult to score, and that's why most of the people go for subjects that they haven't studied. And in such cases, when you are supposed to choose, you choose some subjects basically that is recommended by somebody else, maybe a bhaiya or somebody who is selected, and your nearby influences. So since most of you have not read anthropology, so my first job is to tell you what exactly are we going to read in anthropology, what is this subject all about, and why, what makes it scoring. Okay. And the second thing that I'll talk about is uh, the rules that you have to follow in this game. So this journey is going to be a test match. It's not a 2020 cricket. So it's going to be a long journey that requires some kind of consistency. So you require some kind of rules in order to engage into this game, because without that you are not going to make up much of it. Okay. So that is the second part of the lecture, and the third will be your turn to ask whatever you want. Okay. So if I'm not able to clear up those things in the first half, the second part you can ask whatever you want to ask. Okay. So let's begin. What exactly is anthropology? So basically, a very famous scholar, Aristotle, he gave a very funny yet very realistic definition of anthropology. He suggested that anthropology is a gossip which humans do about themselves. So गप मार रहे हैं एक दूसरे के बारे में. And since the gossip is gossip can be of anything, so it's gossip does not have any relevant subject. Gossip can be about anything: somebody's appearance, somebody's clothes, somebody's way of talking, what he eats or she eats, and what he or she consumes, how does she looks. Anything can be a part of gossip, and that's why anthropology can also encompass or accumulate anything that is related to human beings. Anything or everything related to humans can come under this subject, anthropology. And that's what makes anthropology to be very broad as a subject, because clearly defined कोई एक particular syllabus नहीं है कि pinpointed syllabus हो उसका. Okay, so anything related to us as species can come under anthropology. So what exactly are we going to read? So for that we need to understand the origin or the beginning of this subject. So initially in the medieval period, so when kings used to rule and the church used to be the controller of knowledge, sorry, at that point of time it was believed that God created everything. And आज के time पे भी before reading anthropology you will think that most of the things that we take for granted, okay, जैसे कि family, marriage, religion, हमें लगता है कि बस बन गया. So उस point of time पे भी ऐसा ही था, that people used to think that कि God created the language, God created the religion, God created humans just like the way we appear like this, God created the society, God created us, gave us the command to live in family, to get married, to have children, and all such kind of things was there. But then came a scientist, Darwin. You must have heard about him. So he discovered that humans have evolved from a quadruped relative, एक chimpanzee जैसा दिखने वाला ape evolved into human. And when this thought came up that we have evolved, we were not created like this. So in that case, we started to question every other aspect of our life. Since we have evolved from a quadruped animal to a biped animal that we look like this, quadruped means the ones who walk on four legs, and to a biped animal like the way we are doing like this. So then we started to question that, okay, if we have evolved, then there must be a journey for everything that we take for granted. There must be a journey for our family, there must be a journey for our society, there must be a journey for our economics, politics, everything, because it's a process that have developed rather than something created all of a sudden by some divine forces. Okay, and there came anthropology, which started to study every aspect of human life from its origin, from its beginning, because they started to question that हम अगर ऐसे नहीं थे, भगवान ने हमें ऐसा नहीं बनाया, so in that journey everything, since we have evolved like this, so everything related to us would have evolved like this. Okay, and that is where anthropology came up. And then you will see that there are four branches of anthropology that will be directly or indirectly looking for aspects related to humans, its origin, its evolution over a period of time, and how it sustains itself at present. So that four branches. First one, sociocultural anthropology. The second is biological anthropology. The third being the linguistic anthro, and the last, that is archaeological anthropology. ये सब लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, just listen, because everything I will be discussing, ये in a better, more refined version that will come when I will be taking the class. It's just to give you a brief overview. You don't need to write anything, nothing of that sort is important for the exam point of view. Okay, so just listen, just pay attention over here. So sociocultural anthropology, that is, as the name suggests, it will be looking at societal and cultural aspects of humans. Okay, so basically, uh, we all know that humans are the most dominant species on earth right now. So we control the earth, we hold the future to the earth. Any action that we take, basically that will be deciding the fate of the earth. So we are the ones who are basically taking care of greenhouse gas emission. We are responsible for it, and we are also the ones who are basically ensuring that it should not exceed the certain limits. Okay, we have developed that SDG goals and all such kind of thing. So the fate of earth is in the hand of just one species, that is humans. But was this case always? ऐसा हमेशा से था, और क्या ये कुछ सालों की ही बात है? If we look at the history of human species, it has been, this happened hardly, or this the dominant position as humans, as a species on earth, we have occupied for hardly 500 to 700 years back. Okay, when we started to develop say sciences, when we started to develop some tools, when we started to develop empires and kingdoms and all such kind of thing, उससे पहले we were living in the jungles. Say 2000 3000 years back, most of the species, most of the humans were living in the jungles, and we were basically a fearful species, fearful of the wild animals. But right now, what is our condition? The animals that we were scared of, we have created wildlife sanctuaries for them, to protect them from whom? Us. Okay, तो जिस जानवर से सबसे ज्यादा डरते थे आज से 3-4 हजार साल पहले, हमने सैंक्चुरीज बना ली कि ये क्रिटिकली एंडेंजर्ड है, ये मर जाएंगे हमारे सामने आएंगे तो. एंड आवर एंसेस्टर्स मस्ट बी लुकिंग फ्रॉम टॉप कि यार बहुत प्रोग्रेस कर गए, इसी शेर ने मुझे मारा था एंड अब हम उसे प्रोटेक्ट कर रहे हैं अपने आप से, राइट? सो this is the journey that humans as a species have covered over thousands or millions of years. So what exactly made us dominant? What is the reason that we became the dominant species? So there are multiple reasons. Some of you might say the intelligence that we have, some of you must say some other things. But if I tell you the two major aspects that made humans the most dominant species, the first one is to do something collectively. A lion cannot sit in a place and mobilize all the lions in the world. You speech there or baki sare lions, they start attacking the humans or any other species, that won't happen. But this can be done by humans. A human leader can stand up, motivate certain people to attack, and there can be a coordinated attack against other human group, or there can be a coordinated effort against anything. So for example, that we saw in COVID-19, the entire global say power acted collectively to beat a virus. But can this be done by any other animal? A collective coordinated effort? No. So what gave us that capacity to coordinate? What gave us that capacity to act collectively? And शायद यही एक पावर है जो शायद किसी और स्पीशीज में नहीं है, ना कभी होगी, and जिसकी वजह से we will always be the dominant species on earth, the ability to act collectively. So this is what we will learn here in the socio-cultural anthropology. How this ability to act collectively happened. अब act collectively का मतलब that we live, you must have heard about that statement that man is a social animal. That means a human cannot live alone. So we live in groups, and group is required for our survival. A child, if abandoned, cannot survive for a single day. Not just that, we are dependent on our parents for a long period of time, at least 15-20 years. And as the economy is getting more and more competitive, we will be dependent on our parents for even longer time, because we need to acquire skills that would make us self dependent, and that will take even more time. Okay, so ये society, ये family, ये बनी कैसे? What was the reason? So scientists thought about it, or scholars, they were thinking about this. So when they thought, so one reason came maybe through women exchange. Now don't take it as women being treated as a commodity. It's just that people started to exchange the women between the groups. Okay, so I have a sister, I'll marry my sister to somebody, and in reciprocity, he will marry his sister to me. But what is the result of this? We create a bond that will last for long, because I married somebody's sister, my sister is married to somebody else, and that created a bond. And maybe if this carries on for, if this continues for generations, that means the group will become even more bigger, stronger, the bond will become even more intense, right? This is one of the theory that people started to exchange women across the groups, and that's how multiple groups came together, and that's how the big society started to come up. And as the big society started to come together, so the capacity to do some job that is not possible by a single group or a single individual, now that capacity also increased. I had 10 people in my group, now I have 100 people in my group that can come and collectively act. So अब 100 लोगों का काम कर सकते हैं. And when we developed that kind of capacity, we started to rise up in the hierarchy of the species, right? One theory is that it might be because of population, that human population started to increase, and as the population started to increase, so we would have started to quarrel with each other, आपस में ही लड़ाई करने लगे. And then as the population increased beyond a certain level, in order to maintain a sustenance, some intelligent humans might have come up with an idea of a social contract. You must have heard about this social contract. Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, they talk about this social contract that would have happened among the humans. They must have decided, okay, साथ में रहते हैं, so let's make a social agreement that I will act like this, somebody who deviates will be punished, and everybody should be following so and so rules, so that we as humans could live peacefully, should be able to realize our own potential. So the population would have increased, and that would have created some kind of tension, and that would have led to some kind of social contract. Or another is trade. So basically what would have happened, we accidentally discovered agriculture. That, so there was, like, you must have heard about the story of Newton, basically gravity wali. The apple fell on the head, and then he thought, ki, what is attracting? So there is another story, that there was a woman who was eating that apple, and she threw the seed of that apple, she spit that seed of apple, and within 1 or 2 years that seed grew into a tree. And then she realized ki, that this is how the apple trees grow, and that's how we discovered agriculture. That is, the seeds have the potential to bloom into a full-fledged plant that can give us the fruits, and that's how the agriculture was discovered. And the moment agriculture got discovered, it basically gave us the potential to produce more than what we can consume. पहली बार हमारे पास surplus आया होगा. उससे पहले we were hunter gatherers, so living in the forest, doing day-to-day activities to hunt, to collect some kind of objects, but we didn't have refrigerator. So in that case, whatever we used to hunt or gather from the nearby area, we have to consume the same day, because the meat will become rotten if you keep it for one day. Okay, so that was an everyday activity. We never had surplus. But agriculture, production, we basically now had the surplus, having things that can be stored, having a good shelf life, and more than what we can consume. अब जब ज़्यादा है तो फिर एक्सचेंज करना पड़ेगा. अब मेरे पास चावल ज़्यादा है, किसी के पास दाल ज़्यादा है, लेकिन खाना तो दाल चावल है. So in that case, we will exchange something. Okay, so I'll exchange my excessive rice in lieu of excessive pulses the other person is having, and that's how the trade started to happen. But will the trade happen without law? मैंने कुछ किसी को बेचना है, मैं जा रहा हूँ, रास्ते में कोई लूट लेगा तो कैसे काम चलेगा? So in that case, in order for that exchange to happen, there has to be some kind of law and order. There has to be some kind of regulation. Somebody should come up to protect the parties who are exchanging something. And that's how the trade regulations would have come up. Somebody prominent who is physically strong would create a team that would provide the protection to the ones who are engaging into that kind of trade. Okay, so that would have created some kind of formal bureaucracy, or say would have created some kind of need that a formal bureaucracy should manage the trade. Even आप अभी भी सोच लो that Israel war is going on. So what is getting affected? The trade routes, that is Strait of Hormuz, is being blocked, and then later on, because of this, the international trade has been stopped. And what is the conflict? That who controls the Strait of Hormuz? Is it Iran or is it US? Right? अब ये चीज इस point of time पे भी हम decide नहीं कर पा रहे. Imagine the beginning of the trade, exchange of surplus and all. So उस point of time पे we required somebody to protect the parties who are trading, and that would have created the need of bureaucracy, some kind of formal laws, and that's how the formal system started to develop. Societies should have developed, and laws would have come up, right? And that is some of the theories that suggest that कि society का origin हुआ कैसे. But ultimately एक scholar बाद में आए, and he summarized everything. He suggested, he gave the idea of gift. This person is none other than Marcel Mauss. He gave a very interesting quotation: if friends make gifts, gift make friends. That means in any kind of social relationship, there is always an exchange of something. मैं आपको कुछ, if friends make gifts, that means if friends are exchanging the gifts, opposite is also true. Gifts will make friends. If you give something to someone, it creates an obligation of the other person to reciprocate back. मैंने आपको कुछ दिया तो एक आपके ऊपर एक obligation भी create कर दी to give something back to me. That can be a thanks, that can be some other goods and service, or in case of exchange of women, it has to be a woman That means if I am giving a woman from my family to your family, it somehow creates an obligation on you to reciprocate back in the same manner. So ultimately, it's exchange of something, which he calls gift, will create some social relationship. So any relationship in the world is only and only because there is some kind of exchange. It can be in the form of language, it can be in the forms of goods and service, or it can be through the exchange of women. And that's the summary. So इसने इस बेसिस पे लॉजिक बनाया कि दुनिया में पहला रिलेशनशिप कब बना होगा, when a human would have gifted something to someone. The first human would have gifted something to someone. Say एक अकेला हंटर गैदर घूम रहा था, उसने randomly दो एप्पल देख लिए. So he ate one apple, he was full, and the extra apple he must have gifted to a woman, and that woman, in lieu of that apple, became his wife, and they started a family, and that is how things would have happened. So this is the summary of what he suggested, that anything, any social relationship will happen only when you exchange something, and that is what he calls as gift. No gifts come for free. It comes with an obligation to reciprocate, and that is the fundamental basis of any social relationship. Okay, and that is what anthropology talks about, that society, family, marriage, anything does not started on its own, or was not something that was divine creation, but something humans created. And humans created how? By exchanging something. They created social relationships. Okay, again, you must be taking marriage as for granted practice. ठीक है, शादी करना जरूरी है and all, and we have a number of stories how marriage would have begun, and say stories of divine creatures or divine entities engaging into the act of marriage. Okay, so we have god, goddesses who are married to each other, and they are considered to be examples of an ideal family, right? But here also, marriage and the various forms of marriage, if you see, there is a logic behind it. For example, you must have heard about ki there is different types of marriage like polygyny, wherein one man has multiple wives. Then there is polyandry, one woman has multiple husbands, and monogamy, that is one man and one woman. So if you see the logic, so polygyny, certain religions they support polygyny. Why? What's the context behind it? So polygyny and polyandry, they are largely the result of demography. Population कैसी है? So for example, in a place where there is so much of war, so war में क्या होगा? Male mortality will be higher, and when male mortality will be higher, that means there is a shortage of male as compared to the number of female, and when there is shortage of male as compared to the number of female, definitely polygyny is a better alternative. One man can have multiple wives. Or opposite, suppose if there is a society where there is so much of female infanticide because of some reasons, whatever it might be, so there will be a shortage of female, and that's when the alternative that will come up is polyandry, because there are not enough female per capita men, and that's why one woman can have multiple husbands. But is it like that? For say, for example, if the society allows polygyny, does everyone in that society or every man in that society will have multiple wives, or only few? It's only few people. Now what determines who can have multiple wife and what, and who cannot have it? So then anthropologists they thought ki shayad resources. Okay, the see, we as humans, we are struggling for our survival just like any other species, and for survival we require three things: food, mate, and space. And whatever we are doing, basically it's the struggle for these three entities only. आप IAS की तैयारी कर रहे हो, वो जो भी कह लो, but ultimately it's a struggle for these three things. You want to get regular availability of food, you want to have a good mate with you, and the space. Okay, so this is the struggle for that. We have been just like any other species struggling like that. Now only difference is that just like dogs moving on the roads, they are struggling on a day-to-day basis. But we are not struggling for a day-to-day basis. We used to when we were hunter-gatherers. But right now, we are planning for maybe next 10 years or next 20 years, because अभी 2-3 साल के लिए you are secured. Your parents can take care of it. What you are planning for is, what about the next 10 years, 20 years, or maybe 30, 40 years when I grow old? How my food will be ensured? So you are going for a job that will ensure the regular availability of the food for that time to come. Okay, that's the only difference between us and any other species. वो आज का सोच रहे हैं, and we are thinking of 10 years, 20 years down the line, right? So we are all moving towards resources, or we are all fighting for the resources. So female in general, they will be fighting for the resources that will ensure their say successful reproduction, or say uh, reproductive success as such. Okay, so अब देखो, as an individual, man and woman will have different definition of reproductive success. Why? Basically, see, being a man, uh, I don't have to carry the baby in my womb for 9 months. Okay, so a single man can impregnate many women single-handedly. Okay, so in that case, man's reproductive success is like to have as many children as possible, क्योंकि कुछ तो बचेंगे, right? Because the man does not have to carry the baby in the womb for 9 months and then to take care of the baby. But women cannot do that. Women cannot go into that kind of quest to have as many baby as possible, because with every cycle of reproduction, a part of her body is lost. She loses that capacity. Okay, so her reproductive success is not to reproduce as many children as possible, but to ensure that jitne bhi bacche hain, they should be able to live till the age of reproduction, to ensure that survival of as many children as possible rather than to produce many children. So that's why men, they prefer to enter into polygyny, because that will ensure their reproductive success. A man having multiple wives can have many children, that will ensure the reproductive success of men. But female will rarely go for polyandry, because that will not ensure the reproductive success. Okay, but why would a female want to enter into polygyny? एक आदमी है, उसकी बहुत सारी बीवियां हैं, and then why would one other woman would want to be wife of that man? Because that man might be controlling the resource that might ensure the reproductive success of that woman. Man might be powerful, man might be the king, and that man might be controlling that much of resource that will ensure the reproductive success of the woman. And that's why the woman would happily go into a polygynous marriage, because of the unequal resource distribution. So that means polygyny will happen only in that societies wherein there is unequal distribution of resources, and certain men, they dominate in controlling the resources. वही आदमी की बहुत सारी बीवियां हो सकती है. Rest of the men, they will have only a single wife at max. Okay, so this is something that you will see in sociocultural anthropology, that there is a logic. It's just not कि प्रथा नहीं है कि लोग बहुत सारी बीवियां रखते हैं, या फिर एक वुमेन की बहुत सारे हस्बैंड है. It's not simply the custom. There is a rational, there is a logic behind it, that these kind of practices do exist. Okay, so don't take anything for granted. There is a logical reason behind it, and there can be multiple historical reasons behind it. Okay, so that is what we will see in sociocultural anthropology. Then comes the biological anthropology. So biological anthropology, we basically cover the evolutionary journey of mankind. Okay, so how in that journey from being a quadruped animal to being a biped animal as we look right now. And this puri journey mein, there is a role of culture also, that our physical development is not solely biological, it's biocultural in nature. So for example, we are known by, as I told you, that हमारा dominance क्यों है? एक, because we are social, and the second, because we are intelligent. So that intelligence is because of our larger brain. So if we talk about the brain size, so body to brain size, humans are the species which have the highest body to brain size, and that makes us the most intelligent species on earth. Okay, now what actually led to the development of big and intelligent brain. What is the reason for it? Why didn't other species, they develop the brains or intelligence like humans as we have? There are three major factors. Okay, the first major factor is our ability to walk on two legs. The moment we became biped, so we started to have our free hands. And when we had free hands, in that case, what exactly happened? That we started to use these free hands for making tools. And when we started to make tools, we had better tools. By using those tools, we could hunt better, and more food was available to us, right? More food means more energy to the body, and that energy will be used for fueling the growth of the organ that consumes the largest amount of energy. That is 22% of the body's energy goes to fuel our brain. And some of you might say that ki, nahi, nahi, I don't use my brain at all. In that case also, when your body is at rest, around 21% of the total energy is used for brain only. Okay, so for fueling such a heavy organ that is energy intensive, you require a regular supply of food. जैसे हमने tools बनाना शुरू किया, we were having a good hunt, more food available, more energy for the development of brain. Second is before we developed the tools and all, we used to be passive scavengers. We were not hunters as such. So what is the passive scavengers? That means, देखो, a carnivorous animal would have hunted an animal, so he consumed the meat. Then some scavengers would come like hyenas and all. They would consume the remaining meat, and then whatever was left was consumed by us because we were not capable to hunt physically. इतने strong थे नहीं, and tools we didn't have it. So in that case, what was left for us was merely the bones. But that was a blessing in disguise, because inside that bone was left something that was so much nutritious, that was so energy intense, that we used to consume because we were passive scavengers. Plus we had free hands, so we were able to pick up some big stones and crack those bones, and those bones के अंदर था bone marrow, and that we as humans used to consume. Okay, and that bone marrow became one of the biggest trigger to fuel our brain growth. And the third thing, so we were consuming the bone marrow, we were making the tools, and in that process of making the tools, what we discovered? Fire. You must have seen that cartoon stories and all, wherein the two stones are striking and then there was a spark and the fire was discovered. When the fire got discovered, basically we got control of a servant that was having infinite energy, and we could scare away any animal, we could kill animals, we had a great control over hunting, and plus now the food that we were consuming, that can be cooked. Imagine, more energy available to us, more food available to us, plus the energy which was used for digestion of the food will not be required anymore because the food is cooked. And since the food is cooked, that extra energy will again be recycled towards the growth of brain, and that's how the brain started to grow, and we became the most intelligent species on the earth. So this is the journey. It's not random कि ऐसा हो गया, बस coincidence था, but it is something because of our conscious actions. We were not planning it, but something we did eventually led to. अब ऐसा अगर हम नहीं करते, तो ऐसा नहीं है कि हम जैसे species बनते. Okay, we did it, and coincidentally this all cumulative actions for millions of years shaped the way we are right. Accidental discoveries. Okay, so this is what biological anthropology will talk about. Now let me tell you some very trivias. So basically, women, they basically are good in identification of colors. Okay, so you must have realized this, males in the class will definitely realize it. When you go for shopping, uh, specifically clothes, with your say mother or sister, and males usually recognize like shades of green, like light green and dark green, and your sister can actually recognize 10 shades of green, and she can differentiate एंड हम लोग बस दो कैटेगरी में देखते हैं कि लाइट ग्रीन या डार्क ग्रीन, एंड बट शी कैन टेल यू लाइक पीच ग्रीन एंड पता नहीं कौन कौन से ग्रीन. सो दिस इज समथिंग that we think that ki females are good in identification, but that's not the case. It's a evolutionary journey that has happened. So see what actually used to happen, that male used to be largely involved in hunting, okay, and females, they were involved in gathering, okay, and since female were involved in gathering, so they used to pick up the objects in the jungles, identify whether it's good for eating or not, and that's why based on the color they used to identify that it's suitable for eating or not, and that's why their color identification, that part of the brain that is related to color identification, grew or say developed very much. But on the other hand, males basically have good direction sense, means uh, it has been proven that males are better drivers than females. Exceptions can be there. The reason is that we were involved in hunting for a large period of time, and in that hunting there has to be, so we have to track the movement of an animal and release the weapon tracking the speed so that it could hit the animal precisely, and that's why the sense of direction developed more in males as compared to females, okay. And इसी से एक और story है. The story is that कि why dominance of male is kind of universal or patriarchy is kind of universal. Is it the males imposed upon the females deliberately, or is it something that has happened gradually because of cumulative events? The answer lies in this story itself, that males were largely the hunters and females were largely the gatherers. And why did male become hunters and female gatherers? The thing is that suppose if there are 5 men and 5 women in the group, and 5 men went for hunting, only one came back, चार चले गए, and or 5 women went for hunting and only one woman came back, what is a bigger loss to the group? Loss of women, because even if there is a one man, he can impregnate all the woman can give birth to children, the group can continue. But suppose if there is one woman and 5 men, the woman cannot reproduce at 5x rate, right? The reproductive capacity is limited, and that's why men are more expendables. आदमी को खर्च किया जा सकता है, but women cannot be lost because the group has to continue, the species has to continue. The loss of women will be the reproductive loss of the entire species. So men took up those jobs that involved the risk of life and death, and that's why men will be engaged in hunting, men will be engaged in those kind of tasks that takes them away from home. So they will be risking their life, but when they are risking their life, they require something in return. तो उस समय तो भारत रत्न, पद्म से परमवीर चक्र या इस टाइप के कुछ अवार्ड्स तो थे नहीं, या फिर समथिंग इन कैश और काइंड, नथिंग ऑफ वाज देयर. The only thing that the community can give to them was prestige, the honor, a higher position in the hierarchy, and plus the survival of the group dependent upon them. That's when the males started to gain dominance over a period of time, and that is one of the reasons that you will find the dominance of male being nearly universal, almost universal, okay. So this is all related to our biological aspects, but you can understand that it is not solely biology, it's a integration of biology and culture, okay. So this is the second part that we will cover. The third is linguistic anthropology. As you can understand from the name itself, it's study of language, and you can understand that ki what makes dominant intelligence से क्या ऐसा आया that makes us the dominant species. It's the language, ability to speak. Now the ability to communicate, वो तो almost हर animal में they are able to communicate, but the way we communicate in some kind of symbols, we can write, we can document, and that gives us capacity no other animal has. That is the ability to store the knowledge and pass it on to the next generation, so that the next generation does not have to start from the scratch. Imagine with every generation if we are starting from the scratch, हम अगर कुछ transmit ही नहीं कर पाते, तो क्या हम इस लेवल पे ग्रो कर पाते? Was it possible? Not at all. And how are we able to store and transmit the knowledge? Language. If there is no language, I will never be able to communicate with you. I'll never be able to share whatever experiences, whatever knowledge, or whatever wisdom I have gained in this period of time. It's only because of the language that the knowledge, wisdom of our ancestors could be documented, could be stored, and could be transmitted to the next generation. And this knowledge transmission actually create a repository of knowledge जो हजारों लाखों साल से accumulate होती जा रही है. And we don't start from the scratch, we start from the point where our ancestors left. So with we are moving into a progressive direction because the knowledge is getting accumulated for a period of time, right? And that is what gives us the capacity to become the most dominant species. Now language, इसमें भी सबसे पहले what we see is like the origin. So जैसे कि every culture has some kind of stories like how language originated. जैसे हमारे यहाँ पे सरस्वती माता जी हैं. So she is the one considered to be the mother of all the languages from which all the languages originated. But when we talk about anthropologically the language, so there is some stories, some hypothesis, some theories that will say that language was not created all of a sudden by some kind of divine entities. There was some kind of capacities that we developed. The first capacity is anatomical capacity. कि हमारा vocal box so would have developed some kind of features. There is a bone called as hyoid bone that is very much responsible for the kind of sounds that we produce. So in our evolutionary journey, when we developed this kind of bone, we were able to speak, we were able to make the sounds that we can make right now. Then a higher intelligence, a big brain, and some part of the brain that is called as the Broca area that is responsible for our language. And we'll see that a lot of physical evolution or biological evolution gave us the capacity to make the sounds that we could make. And second, सिर्फ कैपेसिटी होने से काम थोड़ी ना चलेगा, कुछ जरूरत भी तो होनी चाहिए. There should be some kind of urge. What is that urge? Living in groups is the urge. साथ बैठे हैं तो बात तो करनी पड़ेगी. So that desire to gossip, the desire to communicate, that is the reason that we started to communicate, and that's how the group would have been created also. So it was actually a reciprocal relationship. Then desire to communicate created the language, and also the language was the one that created the group, or that would have strengthened the bond between the group. Plus when we created the language, अब groups को bound करने के लिए कुछ ऐसी knowledge चाहिए that could unite the group. So we started to create some gossip, some stories, and many of the gossips and the stories that we created at that point of time would, as per various anthropologists, turn into what we call as religion, what we call as myths, the stories, because it's the collective belief that is required for the group to stay united. अब वो collective belief कहाँ से आएगी? If I believe in the same God, you believe in the same God, whether that God exists or not doesn't matter. What matters is our shared belief, and because of that shared belief we could act together, we could mobilize collectively, we could save each other, isn't it? So अब उसके लिए सबसे ज़्यादा ज़रूरी क्या था? Communication, language. So we created the gossips out of it, we created the stories out of it, and that's how language is something that defines us, or say that distinguishes us from any other species, and that is what we will see in the linguistic anthropology. Plus language play a very important role in our day-to-day life. It shapes our perception, how we see the world, that is shaped by language itself. So let me give you one example. I usually quote this example. Suppose आज के टाइम पे you are seeing two versions of the language Iran-Israel war में. One is the tweet that Trump makes, and the same incident being quoted by Iran या ईरान के social media पे, and you see that they are explaining about the same incident but in two different ways. The Trump shows as if it's a victory of US, and Iran mocks it कि काहे की victory, isn't it? So see, लैंग्वेज, अब आप किसकी लैंग्वेज पे बिलीव करते हो या किसको ज्यादा फॉलो करते हो, दैट कैन क्रिएट अ परसेप्शन इन योर माइंड. और से लेट मी गिव यू वन अदर एग्जांपल, that suppose there is a person who got a job in Uber. So that particular person came up with a appointment letter, and that appointment letter says that congratulations, you have been selected as an urban transport specialist in Uber. And he was very happy that I have got a good job. But that means he has been selected as a cab driver. So अब अर्बन ट्रांसपोर्ट स्पेशलिस्ट लिखा था तो ऐसा लग रहा था कि कोई अच्छी जॉब होगी, कुछ अच्छे पर्क्स एंड प्रिविलेजेस होंगे, समथिंग. बट देन व्हेन यू हियर कैब ड्राइवर, ये कौन सी जॉब है? ये तो गिग इकोनॉमी है, राइट? और मे बी द जोमैटो डिलीवरी बॉयज, delivery partners or delivery executives, isn't it? So the language that you use basically shapes our perception, and जिस तरीके से हम लैंग्वेज को यूज करते हैं बेसिकली दैट विल ऑल्टर द वर्ल्ड व्यू. अब एक जस्ट ऑन ए लाइटर नोट, एक हिंदी का गाना है, आपने गजनी मूवी का गाना सुना होगा, कैसे मुझे तुम मिल गई, राइट? So the way he sings or that song is sung in the movie, it basically creates an emotional appeal. कैसे मुझे तुम, he is very much appreciative, कितना grateful है. But the other way can be कैसे मुझे तुम मिल गई, isn't it? And that can completely alter the perception. The same words, the same language, but the way it is being spoken. So that is what we are going to see in this part, the linguistic anthropology. That language alters our worldview, language shapes our worldview. हम दुनिया को कैसे देखते हैं वो डिपेंड करता है हम उसको कैसे डिफाइन करते हैं, कैसे बोलते हैं, कैसे उसके बारे में डिस्कस करते हैं. And the last part of this is archaeological anthropology. So archaeological anthropology simply means the reconstruction of the past from the material remains. Now we are excavating a lot of sites, we are getting a lot of things from that site. How to make sense of it? How do we construct the society? Because there was no CCTV cameras or no recordings that is available. We just have to recreate that society based on the material remains. कुछ burial pits मिले हैं, कुछ tools मिले हैं, कुछ constructions हैं. How to make sense of it? That is what we'll see in archaeological anthropology. Now, we basically use some basic knowledge like use of our contemporary societal knowledge to understand our past remains. Suppose if you excavate a site and you find a pottery, and in that pottery it was covered with some red color powder, and that pottery was covered with some cloth tied at the neck. What will you make sense of that pottery? ये pottery किस लिए use की जा रही है? You will say that कि maybe for some ritual purpose, some religious purpose. But how do you conclude that? What makes you say that कि ऐसी pottery सिर्फ ritual purpose में use हो रही होगी? Because you are using the knowledge of your society. कि हमारी society में भी तो ऐसा ही कुछ use होता है, and you are using it to understand the material remains of the past. Okay. Similarly, when we say when World War First and Second happened, so there was a lot of unclaimed dead bodies of the soldiers because people were fighting at some other places and all. So it was very difficult. The death rate was so high that it was very difficult for every country to claim the soldiers. Moreover, the soldiers from different countries, they have moved to Europe to fight the battle. So it was very difficult for even the victors also to claim the body of the soldiers and send them back for the last rituals. So उस case में whatever the boundaries were set after the World War, so every country decided to clean their land, and wherever the body was found, they were collectively buried. Okay, and that is what happened in World War First, World War Second both. So collectively 10-12 bodies एक जगह पे मिल रही हैं, collectively उनको bury कर दिया. So when this happened, so that gave anthropologists a sign or a hint that if in a particular excavation I find collective burials, and that too collective burials में ऐसा हो रहा था कि that bodies were dumped randomly, कोई ईस्ट वेस्ट डायरेक्शन में, somebody नॉर्थ वेस्ट, बस उनको मिट्टी में डालना है, बंद करना है, that's it. So that means there it's a war burial. तो ऐसे हमें पास्ट में भी कई सारे burials मिले archaeological sites पे, wherein the bodies were not dumped properly in a proper direction, and that too there was a collective burial. So we used to make sense of it by saying that this might have been a place where there would have been a war, and there had been a lot of deaths, and ultimately these soldiers who do not belong to the same group also, they were dumped collectively in any random direction. So that is how you make sense of the ancient remains. Plus, these ancient remains are also a testimony of our evolution. So if you if you excavate a site of lower Paleolithic, you find stone tools of a particular kind, and then you excavate a site that is relatively younger than the previous one, the lower Paleolithic, and you find tools of a different kind, which are more precise, which are more sophisticated, lighter, better shaped, more well designed. And जैसे जैसे हम evolve करते गए, you will see that as we excavate younger sites, we find that the tools take well defined shapes, they are more geometrical, they are more symmetrical in nature. What does it shows? That the people, they were developing cognitively. उनकी intelligence, उनकी capacity, ability to manipulate or modify the objects, that was improvising. And that is what the archaeology or archaeological excavation, they are acting as a testimony of human cognitive development as well. And that will support all what we are reading here in linguistic, biological or sociocultural anthropology. Okay, one more thing. जैसे कि कई सारे चाल्कोलिथिक साइट्स में या फिर आयरन एज बरियल्स में we started to find that the pit size in which the bodies have been buried, they are of different kinds or different sizes. कुछ pits बहुत छोटी छोटी, and some pits, they are relatively bigger, grand, with a lot of say tools, a lot of other say ornaments and all, and some pits are very normal in size. Now what does it reflect? That hierarchy in the society, stratification has come up. Okay, now how is it supported? हायरार्की कब आएगी, स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन कब आएगी? The society के पास excessive resources हैं and that resources are unequally distributed. Unless and until the society has surplus, there is no point of inequality, there is no point of hierarchy, because everybody is having hand to mouth survival. So there is no surplus. But when we move towards metal age, that is, we had better tools, we started to move into agriculture and all, so there was surplus, and this surplus was reflected in the hierarchy, and that is reflected in the burial pits. The ones who were coming from a high end family, उनके बड़े लंबे चौड़े death beds थे, a lot of ornaments when they were buried. And the ones who were laborers, ones who were basically of a normal class, common people, they had normal size pits with not much burial objects. So that is also supported by this archaeological evidences. That is what we are going to see. So these are the four major branches that we will be covering in anthropology paper 1. Paper 2 is largely about Indian anthropology. So it is an application of what we will be seeing in paper 1. Okay, so the idea of India as a society, how that society developed, and the two major categories in that society. One is the caste, and the second category is the tribe. तो इंडियन सोसाइटी को देखना है, अभी कास्ट कैसे आया, what was the fundamental basis of it. So a simplistic understanding of caste is that Indian society must have also ended up into agricultural era, Neolithic revolution, and when we entered into agricultural phase, what would have happened? That jobs would have been distributed. Some people would have decided, okay, I'll become a farmer. Some people would have decided that I'll become a potter. Some people would have decided, okay, I'll make tools, because not everybody is required hunting gathering. Everybody was doing either hunting or gathering. But right now, since this is a complex task, the task got divided. Over a period of time, people would have specialized their knowledge. I am a good carpenter, I am a good potterer, I am a good say goldsmith, and I would have wanted my knowledge to remain with me so that my livelihood is secured, isn't it? So what would I do? I would ensure that nobody from my family goes to somebody else's family, because that would share my knowledge. What I would do is, I would marry my daughter in the same community who is engaged in the same job, and that's how the caste would have been created. because of occupational guild trying to protect its monopoly over a particular kind of knowledge. क्योंकि इतने टाइम से एक्सपर्टीज डेवलप की है, अगर मेरी बेटी चली गई तो ही विल शेयर दैट नॉलेज विद समबडी एल्स and that monopoly over that knowledge will be lost. So that's how the endogamy would have happened and caste like system would have developed. Okay, this is just one most trivialistic theory, but certain kinds of hypotheses are there to understand how these societies came up or how these groups developed. Because but यहाँ पे एक catch भी है that such kind of things would have happened in different parts of the world. Why only in India caste like institutions develop? क्योंकि एग्रीकल्चर तो बहुत जगह आया, वहाँ पे भी मोनोपोली ओवर नॉलेज की जरूरत होगी, बट वाई ओनली इन इंडिया दैट इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक कास्ट डेवलप? सो देयर आर मल्टीपल अदर फैक्टर्स इन्वॉल्वड इन दिस, but just to tell you that what we are going to see here, it's that institutions that we take for granted were not created by God, but were created because of human efforts and a lot of historical experiences of our society, and that is the caste. Similarly, the tribes. When I talk about the word tribe, what comes into your mind? Most of you will be thinking of a person who lives in jungle, who is semi-naked, covered the lower part of the body with some big leaves and all, having a big say weapon or say spear, something like in the hand, and then covering the head with a crown that is leaves out of it. ऐसा ही कुछ image है, some typical image of being a tribe. But a lot of you might be coming from scheduled tribe community and sitting beside someone who is imagining the tribe like this. Now, how come this image became a common perception in the mind of the people about the tribes? It's a colonial rule. When they came to India, they came and they saw a group of people living in the villages primarily doing agriculture. And then there is a group of people who were living in the jungles and who were not involved in the sedentary agriculture. They divided these communities. They ranked them and say they thought that ki jo agriculture wale hain, they are more developed, they are more evolved, and let us call them caste. And the ones who are living in the forest, let us call them as the tribe, the less evolved, the backward and the primitive. But was it the case forever? क्या हमारी सोसाइटी में डिस्टिंक्शन था कास्ट और ट्राइब का बिफोर ब्रिटिश अराइवल? द आंसर इज बिग नो. There is a term that has been used in multiple literature and calling a community as janjati. That means वो जाति जो जंगलों में रहती. So tribe was not recognized as a different community altogether, but a caste that used to live in the jungles, the ones who survived from the forest. Plus, there are multiple examples of tribe and caste living or say interacting with each other. For example, the case of say Nishad Raj. So when Ramji was supposed to cross the river, so there was a king of the jungle, Nishad Raj, who basically helped him cross the river. Then you must have heard about that Bhilni, Sabri. So that Bhil woman, Sabri and Ramji ne unke jhute bear khaye. And then you must have heard about the story of Hidimba. So these are all examples of the tribes that wherein there has been interaction between the people who are engaged primarily in agriculture and interacting with the people living in the forest. In fact, there is also a very beautiful narrative to explain the Vanar Sena. So Ramji was supported by Vanar Sena, right? Who is this Vanar Sena? Were they people who had a hybrid body like a human and a monkey? Or is it the people who had prognathic face? Prognathic means the jaw pointing outwards, जैसे आगे की तरफ. So if you see the tribes of south living in the forest, they have prognathic face. And these prognathic face people were the ones who collectively helped Ramji. And they were good in guerrilla warfare, living in the forest. They had those attack techniques, they had good survival techniques, and that's how they were better warriors. And that's when they supported a king from north to secure his wife. Maybe that might be a real version, that Vanar Sena was not somebody who were hybrid male and or monkeys, but somebody, the tribes from the south, who had a prognatic face. Are you getting this point? So that is the idea of tribes. So a perception that has been created in our mind by the colonial rules, showing the tribes to be backward, primitive, semi-naked and all such kind of things, that we have to understand that there was an intention for it. What was that intention? To show these people as backward, you are justifying your role or say your rule over them. जब आप उनको backward दिखाओगे, जब आप उनको primitive बताओगे, only then you can justify colonial rule, colonial authority over the forest. Now, why was the rule necessary? Because you require the resources from the forest. You require the wood to build the railways. You require a lot of other forest resources to basically support the industrial revolution that was going on in Britain. So, in order to do that, you have to justify your rule. How will you justify? And why was the need to justify? The need to justification was because यूरोप में पैरेलली फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन भी चल रहा था, wherein people were talking about liberty, equality, fraternity, all such kind of ideals. On the other hand, these same European powers were involved in colonizing the world. How can there be a dichotomy? On one hand, somebody is talking about liberty, equality and fraternity. On the other hand, they are colonizing the world. They will have to justify this to their own people. So they created some kind of a pseudo-science showing that these people are backward, these people are less evolved, and we need to rule over them. And that's when the idea of white man's burden came, that these uncivilized societies are responsibilities of the white men to be civilized. हम उनको civilize करेंगे. That's my the white man's burden. So we'll see how this colonial narratives came up, how it created a perception of the caste, tribes in our mind, and how this has to be busted in anthropology. Okay, so this is a brief overview of paper 1 and paper 2 that we are going to see. Okay, now the next thing that we'll see, the rules of the game. So in the rules of the game, basically understand that this is altogether a different game. अभी तक आपने जितने competition को qualify किया है, face किया है, this is altogether a different kind of competition that you will be working. So it's means IIT or whatever it is, it's almost one day examination. Okay, एक exam दिया and you're done for it. You might be preparing for it for 1 year, maybe 2 years, whatever it is, but it's just a one day exam. But this is altogether a different game with a different set of rules. और अगर आप board mentality या IIT वाली mentality को लेके यहाँ पे चलोगे, so definitely you are not going to qualify this exam because you are playing this game with a different set of rules which are not applicable over here. So play the game with the same rules that are applicable, and वो board mentality is wrong. And what is that board mentality? So that brings me to the first rule, the two traps जिससे आपको बचना है. The first trap is the trap of perfection, and the second trap is the trap of completion. Remember this, I will remind you multiple times, but do remember, don't fall into these two traps. The trap of perfection and the trap of completion. बोर्ड में ऐसा चलता था कि 99% मार्क्स आ रहे हैं, 98% मार्क्स आ रहे हैं, but here it is not like that. If you see the topper's score in mains, he scored hardly 50% marks, and yet he is rank 1. So if you aim for that 99% wali perfection, you will end up as a teacher, मेरे जैसे. Okay, so that perfection is the biggest threat for your competition. And second is completion. See, after 1 year of your preparation, you will be in the same stage as you will be after 5 years of preparation. The syllabus will never complete. And if you think that you will be ever able to complete the syllabus, you will be in a situation that someday you will have everything completed and you will be ensuring that कि बस अब मैं तैयार हूँ, तो वो दिन कभी नहीं आएगा. But we end up in that trap, and that's why we never feel confident for the exam. We feel that कि एक बार perfect हो जाएगी knowledge या complete हो जाएगा तो हम करेंगे, पर वो दिन कभी आएगा नहीं. And that actually makes you fall into that loop of that examination. And the worst part of UPSC is that after every cycle of the exam, you feel that कि next time I will prepare better and will definitely qualify. आपको कभी ये defeat वाली feel आती नहीं, क्योंकि आपको लगता है कि ये थोड़ा सा part बचा है, इस बार वो कर लेंगे, अगली बार हो जाएगा. But the next year when you appear for the exam, you will realize that अभी भी कुछ छूटा हुआ है. So as soon as, so it's a mirage. As soon as you reach closer to the goalpost shifts back. और फिर लगता है यही थोड़ा सा बचा. And you always fall into that trap. You start moving towards the goalpost, always in the illusion that you will touch that goalpost today or next attempt or the next attempt. But every time the goalpost is shifting. And that is the biggest trap. And that's why you should never go for that trap of perfection or completion. Syllabus कभी complete नहीं होगा, knowledge कभी perfect नहीं होगी. But will you be what you should then aim for? Say ready mindedness, हाजिर जवाबी जिसको कहते हैं. ओके, वैसा होना चाहिए. एक बार कोई टॉपिक पढ़ा है, कुछ ना कुछ तो लिख ही देंगे. दैट इज व्हाट वी हैड इन कॉलेज. एक रात पहले पढ़ के जाते थे, राइट. बट स्टिल क्वेश्चन अगर दूर दूर से भी उससे कुछ रिलेटेड है, तो 2-3 पेज तो भर ही देंगे, राइट. एंड दैट इज व्हाट इज एक्चुअली रिक्वायर्ड. यू शुड हैव दिस काइंड ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस. हाजिर जवाब, एक बार पढ़ा है, इतना इंटेलिजेंस तो है कि कुछ ना कुछ तो लिख ही देंगे. Until the time you develop that kind of confidence, understand that you are not going to qualify the exam, because you are falling into that kind of trap कि syllabus complete नहीं है, perfect knowledge नहीं है, model answer जैसे answers लिखे नहीं जाते. And we keep on postponing our day to day activities, thinking that एक बार perfect knowledge आ जाएगी तब answer लिखना शुरू करेंगे. एक बार perfect knowledge आ जाएगी then only I will be attempting the test. No, start it from day one. Don't postpone it, because the knowledge will never become perfect even if you spend 5-6 years. The syllabus is so vast that it will never happen. And if you reach or say keep on accumulating new knowledge, the previous one will get automatically deleted because there is a limited storage in your mind. You cannot act like a supercomputer and remember everything or each and everything that you have read. It is not going to happen. So the first attempt will be the best attempt, provided you work consistently. Okay, so this is the biggest trap, just avoid this. Second rule of the game, the syllabus is your constitution. Constitution, you can understand the law of land. So syllabus is the constitution. Anything beyond the syllabus, even if it is giving you some kind of enlightenment कि यार मेरे को बहुत intelligent feel हो रहा है पढ़ने के बाद, is of no use. You are not here to become a scholar. You are not here to become an anthropologist. You are here to read anthropology just to qualify the exam. If you have that kind of passion कि मेरे को anthropologist बनना है, तो you are at a wrong place. Go join some university, do some kind of research, read articles, journals and all such kind of thing. That is going to help you there. But being, or say somebody being an aspirant, you are only here to gather that much of knowledge that can help you secure a decent amount of marks in your paper so that you can qualify the exam. That's it. That's the only job, and that is with respect to every subject. अगर आप पॉलिटी पढ़ने बैठे हो तो अब आप उसके पॉलिटी के सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजमेंट्स पढ़ने बैठ गए कि बोल के कि मेरे को एकदम डिटेल नॉलेज चाहिए, देन यू आर डूइंग injustice to your preparation. If you're doing injustice to your time, your phase of life, you're at a wrong place. So not, so syllabus के हिसाब से पढ़ना है everything. See, so you should have the syllabus printed, you should tape it on the wall, and anything that you are reading in the class, be it anthropology, be it GS, wherever, you should always try to locate it in the syllabus. Where does it belong? Plus, it will also help you map the entire content. Moreover, whenever in the exam, if you are able to locate any question that which part of the syllabus does it refers to, अगर आप उतना कर पा रहे हो and you have read the entire syllabus of that particular subject, 60 to 70% of the task of answering that question is done. Because even if you don't know the exact answer, you can write something here and there and that might fetch you some decent amount of marks. सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम तो ये हो जाती है क्वेश्चन पढ़ने के बाद आपको यही नहीं समझ में आ रहा कि पूछा कहाँ से गया, which part of the topic is it referring to, and in such cases you are not even able to make a random guess also. That's why you should be in coherence, or anything that you read in the class, you should always be in coherence with the syllabus. You should always map it with respect to the syllabus. And whenever you say that ki my paper is complete or my that subject is complete, it is only when every points in that syllabus is ticked कि ये मेरा हो गया. And you should be aware कि this part of the syllabus I know very well, this part of the syllabus I don't know. Okay, so always map your preparation with the syllabus. Third one, PYQs is the guiding light. How much to read, to what depth you have to read, कितने एक्सटेंट तक कितना नॉलेज की जरूरत है, ये सब आपको पता चलेगा थ्रू PYQs. Without PYQs, your preparation is incomplete because you might feel that I am reading on like अच्छा पढ़ते जा रहा हूँ, सब कुछ करते जा रहा हूँ, but you are not seeing what UPSC is asking. And once the class is over and when you see the UPSC's questions, you feel that कि जो पढ़ा है और जो पूछा है, there is a lot difference or big difference between them. I'm not able to comprehend based on whatever I have read कि ये पूछा क्या गया है, लिखना कैसे. Because ultimately, when you, how does UPSC evaluates you? Does UPSC sees your degrees? Does UPSC sees your efforts? आपने कितनी किताबें पढ़ी हैं, कितने साल तैयारी की है, कहाँ कहाँ कोचिंग की है? Nothing. What goes to UPSC is the 2 pages that you have written, and उसी में सब कुछ है. And if you have articulated well, you definitely are qualified. And if you have not articulated well, no matter whatever effort you have put in, that's of no use. And how do you know that you can write well, you have that capacity? It's only through PYQs. If you're not able to solve the PYQs based on whatever you are reading in the class, that means the class is not going in the right direction. But if you are able to solve the PYQs based on whatever is being dealt in the class, that means you will gain the confidence. You will have that confidence कि देखो जो पूछा गया है, I am easily able to comprehend, I am easily able to write about it. Plus, the benefit of PYQs is that in case of humanities and in case of GS also, that 60 to 70% of the questions they are repeated, and that will save your time, that will save your effort. Even in GS also, the 60 to 70% papers are repeated, questions are repeated. If you solve last 10 years of PYQ of GS mains also, आप जैसे ethics आप लोग पढ़ते हैं, so every year there are 5 to 6 case studies that are coming up, and if you solve last 10 years of case studies, that is 60 case studies. There cannot be any other ethical dilemma that can be asked beyond that case studies. Almost every possible ethical dilemma that can happen in somebody's life have already been asked. The stories might change, the characters might change, but the essence of that story or ethical dilemmas, that will remain the same. And आपने अगर वो 60 case studies कर रखी हैं पहले से, you already have that structure. You can easily comprehend. Reading half of the case study, आप समझ जाओगे कि ये उस story से relate कर रहा है. I have the structure, I can write it now. So PYQs will always be the guiding light. Okay. So whatever you are reading in anthropology, in GS, just ensure that once you are done with the class, write PYQs. And remember one more thing, an extension of this, answer writing is the real preparation of the exam. I always use this analogy. Suppose if you are supposed to participate in a sprint competition, आपको तेज दौड़ना है, so what are you going to practice? Just lifting the dumbbells in the gym can make you run faster? No. So in practice also you have to run regularly, daily, so that you can run faster. But here you need to understand that what we do right now here, we are supposed to write in the mains, but what we do instead here is read more. We read 80 to 90% of the time and spend only 5 to 10% of the time for writing, and that's a big mismatch. अगर आपको मेंस में लिखना है तो प्रैक्टिस में उतना लिखना पड़ेगा. You have to write daily. If you don't write it daily, in that case you are giving a lot of input to your mind, but when the time comes, the brain will not give you the output. I will tell you a very interesting story for that, or say hypothetical case study. Hey, suppose uh, I and you decided to read a book. That book has 10 chapters, and we decided to finish the book from cover to cover. Now you read the book at a stretch. Reading that book was very interesting, and you read it at a stretch. But what I did was I read every chapter, and after every chapter I used to call my brother or my friend and summarize that chapter. भाई देख ये चैप्टर में ऐसा ऐसा बताया है और बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है. After 3 to 4 months of reading that book, you might not remember anything about that book, or you might remember just the essence of it. I might remember summary of each of the chapter. Reason, I will not be remembering what I have read, but I will be remembering what I talked to my brother or my friend. वो conversation याद रहे, isn't it? वो बातें याद रह जाएंगी और उस तरीके से वो book भी याद रहेगी. So what is the difference here? You just gave input to your mind. You just read the book. What I did was I gave input to my mind by reading the book. I processed that information and I created an output for it also by talking to my brother or my friend, giving the summary of every chapter. And I remember that structure, that knowledge that was unorganized just by giving the input became more structured by creating the output. So आप जब सिर्फ read करते हो तो you are just putting in the unstructured information in your mind. That's not structured, and when the time will come to recall it, you will not be able to recall it because वो knowledge structured नहीं है, बहुत हैफेजार तरीके से. But if you have read something and you have articulated it in some way or the other, maybe by writing answers, maybe by talking about it to somebody, after a certain point of time, what you have done is you have structured that knowledge, and when the time comes, you will easily be able to recall it. Okay, so just putting or just having the input without processing an output will be of no use, and that's why you should not wait कि जब perfect knowledge आएगी तभी लिखेंगे. Start writing from day one, and if you keep on postponing, आप समझो कि इस बार नहीं तो अगले साल, उसके अगले साल आपको ये लिखना तो पड़ेगा. So there is a very famous thing that I say कि बिना मरे स्वर्ग नहीं मिलेगा. So you have to go through that process in order to reach that goal. You have to ensure that you have to write at least 300 to 400 answers minimum in order to score a very good say rank, or say score decently in any of the subject. And if you have done this, and it seemed like 300-400 answers, but it's very simple. If you write 2 answers daily, in 1 year you will be able to write 730 answers. That means almost 5 years paper of all of the subjects are completed. That comes out to be 680 answers in total. अगर 5 साल के सारे papers आप GS plus optional करते हो तो that's 680 in total. And you have to just write 2 answers a day in every day of the year. And if you do so, trust me, nobody can stop you from qualifying mains in the very first attempt. So remember, any kind of preparation for mains without answer writing is of no use, because you are simply doing one part of the job, putting input in your mind, but when the time will come, you will never be able to articulate it. You will never be able to recall it. वो याद ही नहीं आएगा. And आपके साथ जो GS की classes कर रहे होगे, आपके साथ ऐसा हो रहा होगा. And this is because you think that कि joining a test series will give you that ability to write the answer. But no. एक test series में कितने test होंगे? Hardly 10 papers, 20 papers. That means in the entire year you will be going through that writing exercise just 20 times. What I am asking you to do is do it 365 times. Every day, 2 answers. And that should become more like a ritual. You can skip revising any notes, you can skip reading the current affairs, but make it a ritual that 2 answers a day I will be writing, no matter what. भले देख के लिखें, पर लिखेंगे. Okay, so remember, this is the most important part for qualifying the mains, answer writing. Okay, and the last rule is consistency. So it's a long journey. I told you that it's a test match, it's not a 2020. And in that test match, the one who is most energetic does not makes it to the last. The one who is consistent makes it to the last. तो थोड़ा सा रेगुलर रहना है. Okay, and it's like कि don't expect your journey to be like this. The journey will be something like this. It will be moving upward, but not in a straight line. It will be ups and down. Every day will not be the same. You will not be highly optimistic, highly energetic every day. The same momentum will not be there. Some days will be very good, some days would be average, and some days would be very dull. कि कुछ नहीं हुआ. But that doesn't mean that one dull day should spoil your next day. Every day there should be some kind of effort that you should be doing. It might happen that there are some personal reasons, maybe दोस्त से लड़ाई हो गई, तबीयत नहीं ठीक है, घर पे कोई प्रॉब्लम है, any reason. But that should not spoil your entire week. Normally what we do is we plan for the week. And when we plan for the week, so suppose if the first 2 days don't go the way that we planned, we decide that okay, next week से ऐसा करेंगे. So in that dull phase of 2 days, we sacrifice the next 5 days. बोल के अगले हफ्ते से करेंगे. क्यों भाई? इन 5 दिन की क्या गलती है? अब वो 5 दिन करो. Why to waste that 5 days and start thinking from the next week or from the next month? So remember this, not all the days will be exactly the same, and plus when you make the targets or schedules, just remember this point, that you are going to make these targets and schedules or revise this target and schedule every week. I plan for this week and I hardly will be able to achieve 60 to 70% every week. But that doesn't mean, that should not demoralize me, that should not basically make me feel underconfident. ये हर हफ्ते होगा, but you should keep on going. The graph should effectively move up, but not necessarily in the right say straight line, something like this. And remember this कि हर दिन एक जैसा नहीं होगा, but I need to ensure that कि जितना maximum utilize करें कर सके करते हैं. Okay, so these are some of the things that you need to be aware of. And अच्छा एक last I just forgot to mention that is, you require only 3 sources, not 30. Only 3 sources for anthropology. Specifically, the first one that you will be requiring is whatever I will be discussing in the class. Second, internet or AI. And the third one is the PYQs. So class notes have to be synced. So whatever I am teaching in the class, you have to ensure that you have to cross check whether is it enough for solving the PYQs that have been asked from that chapter. So if the answer is yes, in that case the content part you are done, wherein you will be using internet or AI basically to see how to structure that content. So you have the raw information, now you have to shape that raw information into a well defined answer. Sometimes we will be able to do it by ourselves, sometimes we don't find how to use that information and shape the answer. Use AI for that. It can give you the structure, it can give you a backbone, it can give you a starting point ki kaise likhna hai. Okay, so these are the 3 sources, and somewhere where you find that ki the class notes or the content is not enough for PYQs, then use AI for it. Some additional knowledge आपको लग रहा है कि यहाँ से मिल जाएगी, use internet or AI for it, and that's how you are done with it. And see, any other source in the market, any books and all, you can read it for yourself, but understand that I have been teaching for last 10 years and I have read almost everything that is there in the market and I have incorporated it into my notes itself. So you don't have to read anything else. अगर आपको वो चीज़ सिर्फ अपनी रीडिंग के लिए पढ़नी है, एम्बर एंड एम्बर या बहुत सारी और किताबें हैं, हैवी लैंड एंड ऑल, you can do it by yourself, but in terms of content you will find nothing new in it. 99% of that is already there in the class itself. So how to check the validity of it? Solve PYQs. And अगर PYQ solve हो रहे तो that means the teacher is ensuring that the syllabus is covered properly, because you are able to solve all the questions that are coming from that particular chapter. And if not, use some internet to gap or say fill the gap of that content जो भी है. So this is the rules of the game that you need to follow, and that is it from my side. I'll just open up कि आप लोगों को जो पूछना है you can ask, and please ये सब पर पूछना कौन कौन सी किताबें पढ़नी है, will basically deal with it when we start the class. So anything that you want to ask? Yes, please. Yes, say she's asking that PYQs that we solve, can it be evaluated? Yes, there will be a Telegram group for it, and you will be submitting your PYQs that you will be solving in the group itself, and the evaluated copies get posted in the group itself. Okay, so that group will be acting as a repository. Suppose किसी दिन आपने आंसर राइटिंग मिस भी कर दी, you can see somebody else's copy जिसने अच्छे आंसर्स लिखे हैं, you can learn from that particular copy, या आप अपने पास सेव भी कर सकते हो, चलो मैंने नहीं लिखा किसी और ने लिखा है तो मेरे पास है. But don't do this, not everybody should be doing this, क्योंकि अगर हर कोई ऐसा सोचने लगेगा तो there will nobody will be writing the answers. Okay, so that group should act as a motivation that everybody else is writing, so I should also write. And trust me, I'll tell you a very honest confession. When the group starts, or when the batch starts, sorry, when the batch starts, so in the first day itself, I'll get hundreds of copies to be evaluated, and the students will complain, sir, copy evaluate नहीं हो रही, बहुत delay हो रहा है, ये हो रहा है, वो हो रहा है, because everybody is so much of enthusiastic कि सब लिखना चाहते हैं पहले दिन, पहले हफ्ते, and फिर धीरे धीरे copies कम हो जाती. And trust me, by the time the batch will end, I get hardly 2 to 3 copies a day. Hardly 2 to 3 copies a day. And that is telling you the brutal reality of how much selections will happen. The ones who are consistent. So last year there was a student, Sugandha, 2024-25 में student थी. She was the one student who basically wrote answers in the very first instance itself. So whatever we used to talk in the class, she used to write it in the same day and used to submit it in the group. She was the one who wrote every answer till the last day of the batch, and she got selected in the very first. Okay, I'm not saying that कि मेरी वजह से ऐसा selection हुआ. I'm saying that कि what you need to learn from it, it's the consistency. शुरुआत में आप बहुत ज़्यादा एनर्जेटिक हो गए, आपको लगेगा कि पूरी एनर्जी झोंक दूंगा, सब कुछ कर दूंगा, but धीरे 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 you will see that the strength of the class will start disappearing, and then only 2 or 3 or 4 students will be the one who will end up till the last, who will maintain the consistency till the last, and you will find those 4 students named this year or the next year in the list. So this is the real trick. There is no intelligence involved, there is no smart tips or tricks involved. What is involved is the consistency and being regular. Okay, 2 answers a day. If you do this for coming 1 year, कोई रोक नहीं सकता आपका लिस्ट में नाम आने से. I can write it on a stamp paper and give it to you. 2 answers a day. It's easier said than done, but अगर आप करते हो, definitely nobody can stop you from qualifying. Okay, yes, anything else? So you will get a PYQ booklet only. So whatever question, whatever topic I am covering in the class, you know it, कौन से unit से होगा, and based on that you can write the answers. And I'll be discussing initial classes में I'll be discussing the PYQs. Then उसके बाद every weekend पे आपकी एक PYQ lecture होगा. Rakshanda ma'am will take those PYQ lectures, and plus most probably by next month end I'll be publishing a book also, PYQ with model answers. You can do it for your reference also. मतलब वो unit wise है, but PYQ booklet आपको मिल जाएगी. As per the unit you can actually see the questions and you can write it. Yes, please. See, if you plan, all of you must be planning for 27. Your time between GS and optional should go by 60:40. Say 60% of the time should go for GS, and 40% of your time should go for optional. Now, in that 60%, say most of you might be going for GS classes also. So if there is a class of 2.5 hours and you're reading 10 hours a day, so 3.5 hours should be for your self study. And similarly, in case of optional, if there is a class of 2.5 hours, around 1.5 to 2 hours you should be giving to your self study of the optional. Now, how to do it means इसमें करना क्या है, self study में करना क्या है. So in case of GS, whatever topics that are being taught in the class, you don't need to जैसे कि आप लोग में से बहुत सारे लोग बड़ी कोचिंग्स में होंगे जहाँ पे a subject is not covered at a stretch. तो आज अगर economics की class है तो tomorrow there will be polity, and the third day there will be science and tech, and the fourth day there might be environment. So 5 or 6 subjects are being covered up simultaneously. So you cannot go with a single subject altogether. So what to do then? So in that case, what you need to do is, suppose there is a lecture of polity today and they taught election commission. Okay. So just come home and see whatever the questions have been asked about election commission in last 10 years in both prelims and mains. Once you do that, आपको election commission as a topic cover हो गया. So whatever that has been asked in the previous 10 years, that has been done. So at least that particular topic is covered, done and dusted. And that is how you should proceed with GS. That any topic that is being covered in the class, if it is important for prelims or mains, I should be able to solve all the PYQs that have been asked in prelims and mains. इससे आपको अपनी नॉलेज की वैलिडिटी समझ में आ गई कि जो पढ़ाया गया वो कितना सही है. Or whatever you are missing based on the previous year questions, you can add it to your notes, and that means your notes become comprehensive. And that is how you should move with GS. In case of optional, simply whatever is being taught in the class, just revise it and solve PYQs related to that particular topic on that day itself. And plus, there will be 2 days leave, Saturday and Sunday for your optional classes. That might not be the case in GS. So on Saturday and Sunday, just revise whatever has been taught in the class for the previous 5 days. That is it. Yes, please. Approximate weightage of each part. Actually, it's very difficult to divide because the problem with optionals these days, the paper has become more and more analytical, and they have started to integrate the multiple topics in the same question. So it's like, pehle it was very easy that the paper one was divided into 2 sections. The first section involved sociocultural anthropology, and the second section involved physical anthropology and archaeological anthropology. Okay, so it was clearly divided. But this time they have started to integrate sociocultural and physical anthropology questions together, and plus the section division is not very much clear. But just to tell you a rough estimate, सोशियोकल्चरल एंथ्रोपोलॉजी से एक पेपर 1 में 400 नंबर का पेपर आता है. So means 8 questions are there, each of 50 marks. So around 150 to 180 marks comes from sociocultural anthropology. And physical anthropology plus archaeology, it constitutes around 220 to 250 marks. So there is a higher weightage towards this physical and archaeology. Paper 2 में the first section is, there are 2 major sections, caste and village, and the second is the tribal India. So caste and village, you will find that 120 to 150 marks, this is the weightage. And tribals, the weightage is around 280 to 250 marks. Approximately the tribal part is on a higher end. So tribal से ज़्यादा सवाल आते हैं. मतलब this is what I am telling you based on last 2-3 years. That is not something that has been followed since the beginning, but last 2-3 साल से ये trend है. The tribal is having more weightage, and paper 1 में physical and archaeological part is having relatively a higher weightage as compared to sociocultural part. Okay. Yes, please. See, the ideally last 10 years, but if last 10 years seems to be very means big target, last 5 to 6 years, 2020 से शुरू करना चाहिए. Reason being 2020, why? Because I feel कि from 2020, that is COVID year, say the nature of the questions that are being asked in the optional that have changed. They have moved towards more analytical questions rather than straightforward questions that were asked before 2020. So minimum 2020 से करना चाहिए, but ideally आप 2016 से करना चाहिए, last 10 years. Anything else? PYQ booklet will be provided to online students. Yes. आप लोगों को PDF मिल जाएगी. Will you dictate the notes in the class or will you provide handouts? Both. I'll be I'll explain a topic just the way I have discussed, and then जहाँ जहाँ ज़रूरत होगी I'll dictate. So initially the dictation might be more because you're new to the subject. So the first few lectures that I'll dictate more. But over a period of time, as you understand the way of teaching, you get in sync with me and you start developing the skills of making notes, my dictations will reduce. I'll dictate only in those areas where I feel that I need to give a comprehensive structure to whatever I have explained. If the topic is too big, I just need to summarize it. I'll dictate 1 or 2 paragraphs for it. But other than that, initially dictations होंगे अच्छे से, so that you come at pace with whatever I am teaching. ऐसा ना हो कि आप जो भी मैं बोल रहा हूँ बस आप लिखने पे लगे हुए हो. but later on the dictations will reduce. Okay, what is the end date? भाई अभी शुरू तो होने दो यार. When the next batch will start and end? Next batch I don't know, मतलब most probably August में I'll start after mains or somewhere near the mains I'll start. End आप 6 महीने का हिसाब लगा लो वहाँ से. For online student does the institute sends material to address? हाँ एक स्पेशल पैकेज है जहाँ पे मैं भी जाता हूँ मटेरियल के साथ पढ़ाने के लिए, बट अभी फिलहाल मतलब वो स्पेशल पैकेज इज नॉट फॉर सेल राइट नाउ. So you'll have the PDFs for every material. Will not be posting it. Uh, yes. Anything else you want to ask? Yes, please. Revise multiple times and try to practice writing. So as long as you don't practice writing, you will never be able to recall it. क्योंकि आप अपने brain को उस zone में लेके नहीं जाना चाहते. Problem is that I am fearful that I will not be able to recall. So that's why I don't get into that zone कि जहाँ पे मेरे को वो डर लगे. And I prepare for the time, or I say I wait for that time that when I'll be remembering each and everything and I'll be able to recall it properly. But that doesn't happen. That I told you na, the perfection and kabhi aayega nahi. So don't wait for that time when you will be able to recall 100% and then only you will start writing. Just write. कहीं भूल जाओ तो एक बार कॉपी खोल के देख लिया and लिख लिया. Okay. And if you do this practice multiple times over a period of time, you will be able to recall better. First and second, if you are not able to recall, your brain will provide you some kind of filler कि आप रुकोगे नहीं. Are you getting this point? So understand this point that you will never be able to remember 100%. You will never be able to remember or recall 100% whatever you have read. But shall this or say whether it should act as an obstacle or not? No. आपका दिमाग कुछ ना कुछ जैसे कॉलेज में होता था कि कुछ भूल भी गए तो इधर उधर की बात लिख के आगे बढ़ जाएंगे. And that is what you need to develop here also. That even if you are not able to recall 100%, that should not stop you from writing an answer. And वो तभी होगा जब आप उस प्रैक्टिस से बार बार आप फेस करोगे उसको कि दैट यू आर forgetting something, but it's okay. I'll do something and fill the page or complete the answer. Yes, please. Okay. So I start with theories. Okay. So unit 6, paper 1. And after theories, I'll cover some parts of sociocultural anthropology, most probably religion, language, and all such kind of things I'll cover. And then I'll move to paper 2. That is, and then at a stretch, I'll be taking 40 lectures to cover paper 2. And then I'll be moving towards physical anthropology. That will take another 40 lectures to cover physical anthropology along with archaeological anthropology part, both paper 1, paper 2 combined. And then remaining parts of sociocultural anthropology I'll take up in the last. So that is how the sequence will be. Anything else? What is the difference between last year course and this year course? I have lost a lot of weight as compared to last year, so I'll appear differently, definitely. So क्योंकि last year वाला leak हो गया, I can understand. तो वो तो थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ूंगा तो कुछ ना कुछ नया तो आ ही जाएगा. Will offline students be provided? Please ask these kind of questions to academics. Sorry, बाहर admin से. As a student preparing for UPSC, is it good to go first for optional? Never. Never ever start your UPSC journey with your optional. And आप में से अगर कोई ये सोच रहा है कि पहले मैं ये ऑप्शनल पढ़ लूँ, डोंट डू दिस. ओके, अगर आपने एडमिशन लिया है तो पोस्टपोन करा लो नेक्स्ट बैच के. क्योंकि द थिंग इज कि एक तो बेसिक नॉलेज जीएस की ज़रूरत है. इफ़ यू आर कमिंग फ्रॉम दैट काइंड ऑफ बैकग्राउंड, साइंस और से बीटेक एंड ऑल, you don't have the knowledge of history, you don't have the knowledge of polity, you don't have the knowledge of what you are going to explore in UPSC journey, and altogether you start with a humanities subject, that too of MSc level. you will never be able to sustain in this journey itself if you start burdening yourself from the very first day with the option. Very difficult to do that. If you're coming from arts background, it's still okay, but if you're coming from science background, it's definitely very difficult. Okay, so never ever start with your optional. Plus what will happen, some people might have started with optional maybe abhi ek mahine mein shuru kiya, and then ek mahine baad kahin pe GSC class shuru ho rahi hogi and they will be joining the GS classes together. You will never be able to handle the burden of both of them taken simultaneously, because we are not coming from that background wherein we were used to read 10 hours a day, that too for 1.5 years at a stretch. So but when you start reading GS and optional together, so everything seems to be new, and that would require a lot of effort and consistency from you, and doing both of them together simultaneously, and that too मतलब दोनों एक साथ शुरू कर दिया है या दोनों एक साथ कर रहे हैं, बहुत difficult हो जाएगा, and people will start actually running between pillars and posts, like कि एक क्लास करके आया, दूसरी क्लास करके आया, उसके बाद एनर्जी नहीं बची, और दिल्ली की एनवायरनमेंट, दिल्ली की गर्मी, you know it, and it's very difficult to do it. Okay, so what my suggestion is कि start with GS, develop some kind of flow, maybe 2 3 months or 4 months, and once you have developed that kind of flow, then start with your option. Else not advisable at all to start with optional. That might harm my commercial interest. A lot of students might decide कि नहीं ये नहीं करते, but definitely दोनों एक साथ start करना और करना बहुत difficult है. Plus starting with the optional is not advisable at all. You should have some basic knowledge of these. Okay, I'm not saying this because ki I expect you to know something before coming to the class. Nothing of that sort is there. I'll start every topic from the scratch, but that doesn't mean कि you can start with the option. एक GS की understanding, थोड़ी familiarity होनी चाहिए in order to read a arts like subject like anthropology, and that too of MSc level. Okay, or MA level. Anthro में MSc MA दोनों चलता है, so don't get confused. Okay, an online enrolled student can meet you offline. Definitely, most welcome. What exactly is the value addition in context of anthropology? अरे यार, last year के बैच से ही compare करना चाहिए. Okay, anything else you want to ask? 16 मार्च से. हाँ ठीक है. Okay, जान एंड तक वो भी खत्म हो जाएगा, जान एंड तक वो भी खत्म हो जाएगा. पर देखो, सिर्फ बैच ज्वाइन करना इज नॉट द कंप्लीशन ऑफ द सिलेबस. यू हैव टू पुट इन द एफर्ट. आप ज्वाइन अभी कर लो, आप ज्वाइन 2 महीने बाद कर लो, सिर्फ ज्वाइन करने से सिलेबस कंप्लीट नहीं होगा ना. आपको एफर्ट देना पड़ेगा, टाइम देना पड़ेगा. इतनी गर्मी में आप 4 4 जगह घूम के आ रहे हो, एक क्लास वहाँ करो, कहीं और करोगे, या दूसरी यहाँ करोगे. हाउ विल यू मैनेज दैट? इमेजिन कि 5 घंटे की 6 घंटे की क्लास के बाद विल यू हैव स्ट्रेंथ, will you have that kind of capacity to read by yourself? बहुत difficult हो जाता है. So take that call accordingly. आप कुछ दिन करके देखो, अगर होता है तो it's very good, नहीं होता है तो then you have the option to get yourself shifted और क्या. Okay, anything else? Yes. अरे क्लास तो यही रहेगी 5 to 7:30. Okay, if there is any extra class maybe at the end of the batch, maybe on Sundays and all, so that will depend upon the class availability. Other than that, even that also usually stays on the same time, but वैसे regular classes will always be 5 to 7. I'll never change the time, don't worry. Anything else? Yeah. See, being a teacher, I cannot label a topic to be difficult. Okay, because मतलब anthropology पढ़ाता हूँ, अगर मुझे कोई topic difficult लगने लग जाए तो मैं पढ़ाऊंगा कैसे? Okay, so that is the case. But that actually depends upon your background. So there are some people who are from medical background. Okay, so doctors होंगे. For them physical anthropology is like a cakewalk. So for them genetics is like कि यार हलवा है, आराम से समझ में आता है, आराम से कर सकते हैं. But people who are from non bio background, तो उनको हो सकता है कि genetics में शुरुआत में थोड़ी सी difficulty है. Okay, it's not that difficult, but for them it might seem to be little difficult. People who are from arts background, they might find sociocultural wala part, theories wala part to be very easy, but the science wale students say BTech and all, they might find sociocultural part to be very much vague. Reason being कि people coming from science background, they have been say trained to see things in the forms of facts. A is equal to B, LHS is equal to RHS. So there is nothing called uh, say some kind of opinions. But in sociocultural part there are opinions. So it's the same thing. 10 people are seeing and 10 people are talking differently about it. So वहाँ पे उनको समझ में नहीं आता कि सही क्या है, कौन सही है, सबकी बातें सही लग रही हैं, but eventually nobody is right, everybody is having their opinion. So they might find it to be too difficult or too much abstract. Okay, so that depends upon your background also. So not everybody will feel the same kind of difficulty in every topic, but eventually एक point of थोड़ा सा, हाँ इसके बेसिस पे आपको बता देता हूँ, हो सकता है कि थ्योरीज जब शुरू हो तो you might feel that it is difficult, it's going over my head, but be patient. Okay, थोड़े टाइम आप बस वेट करो, things will start making sense. All you have to do is be patient and just trust the process. आपको सब समझ में आने लग जाएगा, and but it will take some time to adjust with a new kind of topic. Okay, कोई भी ऐसी टॉपिक ऐसी डिफिकल्ट नहीं है दैट कि आप कितना मर्जी पढ़ लो एकदम सर से ऊपर ही जाता रहेगा, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. इट्स वेरी इजी एंड हाई रिटर्न वाले टॉपिक्स. डोंट वरी. ओके, या प्लीज. व्हाट शुड बी द अप्रोच ऑफ notes making? See, notes making, the class notes should always act as your base. Okay, that is, जो आपकी क्लास में पढ़ाया जा रहा है, जो आपके रनिंग नोट्स वगैरह बनाओगे, that should be your base. You should always make it in sync with the PYQs. So whatever you are say, whatever is relevant in the PYQs, you should use that to write the answers. And wherever you find that ki my notes are not able to say answer the PYQs, so जो भी extra knowledge that you should add into your class notes. So the base should be your class notes, and anything extra that should be added in the class notes itself. So that should be the way. And second, say I'll be in the initial classes, I'll be discussing a topic, and second I'll be dictating. So how do you distinguish between what I am discussing and what? So you should always divide your page into two half. On one side, you should always be writing whatever I am discussing, say running notes, जो भी आपको समझ में आ रहा है आप लिखते जा रहे हो. And second side, you should be writing the dictated part. Okay, so that's how you should be distinguishing it. Ultimately आपको running notes ही कायम आएंगे, क्योंकि वो अपनी भाषा में लिखे हैं, बहुत लेमैन भाषा में होंगे. It's very easy to read it and comprehend it, and no matter how big they are, आप उसको एक दिन में एक रजिस्टर आराम से रीड कर सकते हो या दो रजिस्टर आराम से रीड कर सकते हो. But say dictated notes are relatively more sophisticated. They are more say sophisticated English and all. You will never be able to remember it because it's more bookish type English. But running notes, they are written in a very day to day common English language या अपनी day to day भाषा में लिखे हुए हैं, तो वो आप हमेशा उससे relate कर पाओगे. You will always be able to remember and recall it. Okay, so I would always request you to focus on this part कि running notes आपको बनाने रहने हो. Okay, बाकी dictate तो करेंगे कुछ ना कुछ. Next. Yes. सीएस के साथ ओवरलैप, बहुत जगह पे ओवरलैप है. आप हर साल देखोगे द टॉपिक्स दैट वी आर रीडिंग इन एंथ्रोपोलॉजी, एक टॉपिक उसमें से एसए में रिपीट हो जाता है. सिविलाइजेशन, कल्चर, समथिंग लाइक दिस, एंड लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स दे आर गेटिंग रिपीटेड. प्लस इंडियन सोसाइटी, कास्ट, ट्राइब, women issues, gender inequalities and all such kind of things, that is the topics that we'll be reading in anthro. Okay, then social justice governance में tribal वाला part, SC/ST वाला part, that is a part of OBC वाला part, that's a part of anthropology only. Okay, साइंस इन टेक में बायोटेक वाला पूरा पार्ट इट्स कवर्ड इन जेनेटिक्स. तो काफी ओवरलैपिंग. एनीथिंग एल्स? I think I have taken the questions. So that's it for today, and we'll see you in the class that starts on 27th of October. Sorry, 27th of April. Very sorry. Thank you so much.